no Jutsu!
Weak.
So, welcome back to Talk No Jutsu, where Knick-Knack and I and other combinations of people rant and rave, but we actually do a tiny, minuscule bit of research. Maybe enough for me to put up on screen. We'll see.
Your podcast introduced the subject.
So this week we're going to talk a little bit about some case studies of remakes and reboots of anime. And I want to specify, so when I say remake and reboot in this context, we mean a show that has at least a 5 to 6 year gap between its original run, the start of its original run, and the new run. Typically, some of these are going to be case studies of shows that were remade one-to-one up until the original show ended and then continued because the manga didn't finish in time.
I don't know if I'd say it has to be a 5 to 6 year gap, just as much as it has to be a complete readaptation or typically a retelling.
No, in terms of a remake, yes, it's any sort of retelling. But in terms of a reboot
that's a little
at
different.
least 5 to 6 years. Because if it's relatively close, then it's just a continuation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Boruto. Not a reboot of the Naruto franchise. It's just a continuation. You know? But in one of our case studies, there will be an example where we pick up a show several years after it's ended.
And it's got to be intended to bring in new audiences, too. Like,
Exactly.
I think Index went a fair amount of time without a new entry, and then it got a bunch of entries at once. I wouldn't call that a reboot, though, just because it's still meant for its original audience. It's not meant to bring in brand new people.
And in that vein, I think let's start with the straight remakes, and maybe we'll start with the two older ones, since we're not... I will bring up Sailor Moon Crystal right now, but neither of us have seen Crystal, and I don't think either of us have fully watched the original series, so we can't really talk about it as a case study as to whether or not it's a good reboot or that kind of thing, why they brought it back. We just don't know enough.
The same goes for the other one I have here, which is Dororo, which I didn't even know had an original, to be honest.
But the two of them are very well-known reboots. Sailor Moon Crystal. I have a friend who doesn't watch anime who's seen Sailor Moon Crystal. Mm-hmm. Our Persona 5 friend has seen Crystal.
Really?
She's seen Crystal.
I'm always surprised when it comes to anime and her. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, this is the person that watched like 3 episodes of Death Note and was like, meh.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think I'll go first because I want to cover 2 shows that have had a really big gap between their original showing and their reboot. And the first is Shaman King. So in 2021, we got a Shaman King remake series. And the original anime came out between 2001 and 2002. So we have like a full, 19, 20-year gap between when the series originally aired and when the reboot started.
Is there a particular reason, like for Sailor Moon Crystal and for Dororo, which is because they were so old as adaptations that they could introduce it to a new audience by remaking it? Was there a reason why Shaman King got remade? Was it like inaccurate? Was it unfinished?
A good chunk of it was that it was unfinished. So the original series ran from 2001 to 2002, but the official run of the manga didn't end until 2004. So the original run of the anime never had the proper ending. It kind of ended off, they ended the series, but it was not the canon ending, and it didn't follow the manga, which is going to be the case in several of our reboots that we talk about. And I wanted to start with it because it's been so long. However, in the gap between the original anime release, the ending of the manga, and this re-release, there were several side stories, like Shaman King Zero, Shaman King Red Crimson, and so several manga spin-offs have continued through this time. So it's obviously remained a relatively popular series, and in fact they have a brand new licensed property, Shaman King Marcos, that actually started in 2021 right before the show started re-airing. So a lot of this reboot is, I think, due to the fact that there have been several manga series that have kept it popular in fans' minds, and a really recent series that just came out to a lot of hype. And so this new series is set to adapt the entire original manga in, I think, 52 episodes officially, or maybe a little more. The original run was 64. So the original manga had 35 volumes, 32 in the original run and 3 more. And the original was made by Studio, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. It's spelled Xebec, and I'm going to say Xebec. because I don't want to say Exibek because that sounds a little awkward. And at one point, it did split off and end differently. And I love the original Shaman King. It's quite a solid show. A lot of people agree. The opening is godlike. And I'm really excited for the new one. I've been watching it, and honestly, the production value is so much higher. And I think a big reason why they can have such a higher value of production is because it's a known series with fans. So they know that this is a reboot. It's going to appeal to the original audience and anyone who's gotten into Shaman King from any of the recent spin-offs, all of which have been serialized in magazines like Shonen Jump. All of them have been magazines serialized in big magazines for shonen, which is a big thing for keeping anime alive. If it stays in shonen magazines, people are going to keep getting the magazines, they're going to keep reading it.
So in this case, it was just a matter of that it was unfinished, and they weren't going to be able to just make another season, so just reboot the entire fucker.
Exactly. And so the new series is done by Studio Bridge. And Netflix has the streaming rights currently. But, so far, I'm liking it. And I think it's a good example, which we're going to see another one of quite quickly, of staying exactly to book to please the fans while still creating a really good product. Mm-hmm. And there's just enough of the original left in it that you can kind of be like, yeah, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the animation quality is so much better. Honestly, it's not even a toss-up.
Well, they want to move to I guess, because the next two off the top of my head that we could be doing, they're both of a similar thing where it was not very accurate by the end of the...
So, I'll talk about the next one, and then Nick Knack will finish up this category.
I think Sekio will have more to say on the rebooted part of the next one, I think.
Yeah. So, this next one is obviously Fruits Basket. We could not make this video without talking about Fruits Basket. This series came out from 1998 to 2006. It was 23 volumes long. Now, the original show aired in 2001, so obviously that is 5 years before the manga ended. That is a not insignificant amount. Like, it was 2 years on Shaman King, but this is a 5-year gap of volumes that was never adapted. And the original show only ran 26 episodes, and it doesn't even have a proper ending. If you watch the original show, it just kind of, at one point, makes a turn and then just trails off, and there's never another episode. There's no resolution. We don't get to find out how it's solved. It really just leaves us in midair after diverging from the storyline.
It was a matter of being incomplete and inaccurate.
Yeah, and it was made by Studio Dean.
We're going to see them again.
Yeah, at the time. So, the manga also, after ending in 2006, from 2015 to present, there is a spin-off called Fruits Basket Another, that's a shoujo demographic as well. It's shown in 2 magazines. And there's also a Fruits Basket Three Musketeers arc that has been running in Hana to Yume magazine from 2019 to 2020, parts 1 and 2. Now, this new anime series that we've been hearing so much about, because it has been showing every single season, I think, for the last 4 or 5 seasons, pretty much, is made by Studio TMS/8pan.
I haven't heard of them, actually.
I've not either. And it is 61 episodes long as of present. And I believe the final season is airing now.
It actually got finished. That's so rare in anime.
Yeah, it got finished, and it's 61 episodes, and I've seen the first 2 seasons of it, and it sticks exactly to book. And the animation, I love what they've done. It's the same thing with Shaman King. They don't change the art style at all. It's just crisper. There's more pixels. It's nicer to look at. They have the more money to focus on the backgrounds, mm-hmm. obviously, rather than just putting generic watercolors in the background. So it's incredibly well done. I think it looks beautiful.
I think next, following off that, is one of the most well-known remake at this point, I think, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is interesting. Because even though it didn't have that... Because the original series was released back in 2003.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was very popular. It still was regarded as a classic for what it was.
And it did get to finish its run. It was never cut off.
Yeah, it had an alternate ending, which fans didn't think was as good as the manga. But no one really held it too bad against it.
And I believe the movie goes with the original.
Yeah.
There's a movie...
The first movie.
There's a movie, the first one, that basically establishes it as an isekai at one point.
Yeah.
That goes with the original
The original
series.
ending was fucking wild.
Yeah, it was so different, honestly.
But so it's even more strange that it sort of started the trend, I guess, that we see more today, where
because it had the fastest reboot.
Yeah, where basically the mangaka actually managed to finish the manga, and once it was finished, they looked and said, "Let's just remake it."
Mm-hmm.
And although they didn't cover the early portions as much because they were heavily well done.
Yeah, the interesting thing there is, so if you watch Fruits Basket, it's basically 1-to-1 episode to episode for the first 20 episodes or so, or a little less. In Fullmetal Alchemist, the first, 2 or 3 episodes covers, 10...
It's almost like a recap episode. A recap season.
Yeah, really quick recap episode. So it does start on the premise that you did watch the original, and that you are just watching this to get a canon ending from where it's
because this is only 2009. This is 6 years later.
Yeah, which is really the blink of an eye. That's basically our lowest end of, reboot, remake.
Yeah, and both times it was done by the same exact studio, Bones and Bones.
Yeah, which means that they definitely were we're remaking this.
So it's clear this was remade, possibly fan demand, but it's done by the same studio, so I assume it's also a matter of just creator passion.
Maybe the studio just really loved the end product of the manga.
Yeah.
Maybe they were unhappy that they had to end it uncanon. What was the original manga run? Because I know the manga ran longer than the original show did.
Fullmetal Alchemist. Let me take a look here.
Yeah, because it must have. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to make it non-canon as an ending.
Well, they also went so far from the original ending, it very well could have.
Yeah, at some point it would have had to diverge.
The original ending to the original anime was 2004. Mm-hmm. The ending to the manga was 2010. So they basically finished up the manga and then...
Oh god, so, and I saw...
They started Alchemist Brotherhood prior to finishing the manga, but they knew the manga would be done by their ending.
Because they ended it in the same year. The Brotherhood ends in 2010.
Brotherhood started in 2009.
Yeah.
The
and Brotherhood...
original manga ended in 2010.
And Brotherhood is a long show. I think it's 61 or 64 episodes total. So, I mean, they really pushed out 3 seasons.
They knew they were finishing up that remake.
Yeah. And you can also tell in the quality, they knew they were going to have viewers. They put a little bit more money into it. Mm-hmm. It holds up against anime today. It is beautiful. And, oh god, the openings. Oh god, the openings. So amazing. Truly, so amazing.
So I don't know, did you have anything else on your remake list?
I think Hunter x Hunter counts here.
Yes,
I'm going to slide in Hunter x Hunter here. I've never seen the original. I exclusively have seen the 2011.
I always forget there was an original.
It's weird because the manga is ongoing since 1998. It's currently at 36 volumes, and the author has, I think, a lot of health problems. So he takes a lot of breaks. There have been a lot of long gaps in publication. And because of that, originally it started with a film, in 1998. And then there was a television series that ran from 1999 to 2001, done by Studio Nippon Animation.
Never heard of them.
Never heard of them. And that had 62 episodes. And then there was a reboot in 2011, and it's actually just known as Hunter x Hunter 2011. People just put the year by it, and it's run for 4 years, from 2011 to 2014. It's officially listed as still ongoing because it follows the current manga, and it's 148 episodes long. So it is a significant chunk of the new manga kind of adapted, and it has gone through a new director every 20 episodes, or new producer every 20 episodes, and it's done by Studio Madhouse. I don't know if you know them.
I do know them.
There's also an extensive list of video games based on Hunter x Hunter. And a lot of people genuinely agree that the 2011 is quite good. It is a very good adaptation. The only thing is, it's kind of on hold because the manga's kind of coming out at such a stagnant rate that, once you catch up, you're kind of stuck.
They could have either gone the old route of making filler or making a worse alternate ending. But
I'm glad that they didn't go filler, because Bleach made that mistake to keep Bleach airing, and it was honestly its downfall as an anime. Although Bleach is coming back. Doesn't count as a reboot or a remake, but it's coming back.
It's getting a finish.
Yeah, so that's why it doesn't count as a reboot or a remake. But yeah, Hunter x Hunter is one of those things with a kind of checkered past. It's hard to kind of see what's happening in a lot of cases with it, because it's so separate.
So I guess moving into the reboots, I guess I'll start since Fate sits at a bit of a weird spot where it's both a remake and a reboot. Because if you've followed the podcast, Fate 2006 is kind of hard to watch in some ways.
It's and when he says hard to watch, that includes music quality, animation, direction.
I actually quite like the music, but it's just not.
It's odd.
It's direct. The direction of it's very odd.
Yeah.
And even though it's not as bad as getting a full-on alternate ending with Fullmetal Alchemist, some parts were not quite canon. So I know it's not the least regarded of all the Fate series by fans, but it becomes a little like, and it didn't need a reboot at all or a remake. Until they did Fate Zero.
At which point
which was more of a reboot at the
Yeah.
time. Because they adapted the prequel series, which came out around the time the anime did. But then they adapted it like 5 years later. It was a reboot. They changed much of they changed the production studio from Studio D to Studio Ufotable. And when they did that, it actually got decently popular. So now a prequel's been released for this anime that is generally regarded as not very good, and
so now you
got a visual novel not released worldwide.
Yeah, now you gotta fix the anime that people are going to be watching to follow up because you don't want them to have to go back to stay 2006.
But here's where things get a little bit weirder. They didn't remake Fate 2006.
Exactly.
Because Fate 2006 was an adaptation of the Fate route of the visual novel Fate Stay Night. It's not the only route. Instead,
so they readapted Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, which was a different route, right?
Yes, but that's actually a remake still, because it was a remake of a film that Studio Dean made after finishing up Stay Night.
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. You are weaving a complicated web here, my friend.
So, they remade the film into a TV series where the first half feels fairly similar, but done better with the original Stay Night. Now, you want me to get things even more complicated here?
Oh, Lord, help us.
Then they go and do new movies adapting Fate Stay Night again, but this time the last route, which is a retelling very different, but it readapts the same events, but a different version of them. So, whoo!
You up in here making the Gordian knot for us to figure out.
So, this is a weird thing where it's both not a remake, it's a reboot, but also a remake, but also rebooted again. It is fucking weird, and I figured it was a good way to transition us into reboots.
Yeah, because I've got another interesting one here to follow that up, and that's Inuyasha, and I think a lot of people may not agree with me, but hear me out here. So Inuyasha's manga ran from 1996 to 2008. It was 56 volumes. The original anime TV series was done by Studio Sunrise, ran from 2000 to 2004, so it ended 4 years before the manga officially ended, and it was 167 episodes. Like, knick-knack, that's a lot of episodes, 167 for it not to be complete. And they didn't complete it with a weird ending, they just left it off. And then, about, 5 years later, they released Inuyasha The Final Act, which was the continuation. It came out the year after the manga ended, and it adapted, I think the equivalent of must have been 8 or 9 volumes into 26 episodes. Super short, super condensed, just finishes the series by the book. So that ran from 2009 to 2010, also under Studio Sunrise. Several films came out, and then in 2020, and this is where you may start to argue with me on a reboot, we get Hanyo no Yashahime, which is about the children of the original characters, but we still get to see the original characters.
It's a reboot in the same way that if you're a Star Wars fan, starting at episode 7, it's a reboot. It's not telling a...
But the problems that they're solving have to do with the original story. Yeah. So it's super connected, which is why I'm considering it a reboot. Also, it comes out about 10 years after the final act ended. It's done by Studio Sunrise still, and is currently sitting at 24 episodes. So, I mean, this is a fraught show. You've got a 5-year gap before you could finish the anime, although I'm glad they didn't put in filler, because Inuyasha is already, long enough in terms of arcs. And then you've got another, 9-year gap before they even make another another anime, and I don't think this anime is... It's based on... I want to say it's not based on a manga that came out earlier. Like, I think it is... It might be original to the universe. Like, I don't think there's a Hanyo no Yashahime manga.
It's been interesting, because that Hanyo no Yashahime has been fairly popular as a reboot strategy. Like, even if we don't fully consider Boruto to be a reboot because it released so soon after Naruto, it is going for that same... I guess it is kind of a reboot. It's just not a...
It's starting it for new fans because you don't have to watch all of Inuyasha and the final act, a combined almost 200
and you
episodes.
don't have to watch Naruto and
because
Shippuden
they'll explain it for you.
Boruto.
Yeah, they'll explain it for you in Hanyo no Yashahime.
And the same holds true for the new Higurashi reboot as well, I believe. Because Higurashi's a reboot as well. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I'm seeing a lot more studios do. So it's interesting to see sort of a nostalgia cash-in recently.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because a lot of these nostalgia things are then things that I was into a long time ago. Like, I mean, I'm hitting the jackpot here with remakes and reboots and kind of things in the same universe as something I've already seen. And then I've still got even one more example. I don't know if you do.
I do as well, but I want to save it for last because it's the most infamous remake of all time.
Okay, so I've got a fun one next. This is going to kind of count and not count. So I'm going to... Prince of Tennis. So Prince of Tennis ran from 1999 to 2008, 42 volumes. The original TV series ran from 2001 to 2005. So it ended 3 years before the manga did, right? It's produced by Studio Transart and then Production IG. And it was 178 episodes. And I loved this show. I watched all of it. And then in 2003, there was an OVA released. And in 2005, another anime film. And in 2006 to 2009, as the anime was ending, right, they released the National Tournament, which is a continuation that's 26 episodes long, under a different studio, MSC. Then the manga kept going with the new Prince of Tennis. It was a reboot in and of itself. It continued going, you know? New Prince of Tennis. And New Prince of Tennis got a series of episodes based on it about 3 years later. And there were some anime films that came out after that. New Prince of Tennis got an anime 4 years later in 2012 that ran for 13 episodes. And there were some specials released around the same time, you know? And then, just recently, we've gotten a pair of episodes, New Prince of Tennis Hyotai vs. Rikai Game of the Future. And we got a recent movie. And, just in the last couple of years, we got a brand new live-action remake of the entire series, which was a remake of a Chinese make of the series that came out 10 years ago. Also, we had a new Japanese movie that was live-action, and we had a live-action Japanese movie 10 years ago.
Aren't they also doing a new, really awfully animated 3D animation reboot?
Yeah, so, I mean, this show has been like a dog with a bone. It just keeps going. I mean, they're even rebooting the live-action version of this show. You know? And it's a fantastic reboot, by the way. 10 of 10. Highly recommend. It's on Netflix.
I guess, speaking of bad 3D animation remakes, Berserk, everyone!
Oh, God!
The 1997 Berserk, from what I know, because I've actually not seen either.
I've seen the new one.
This one was done by OLM Incorporated, OLM Team Iguchi.
And it was really, the original one was really unfortunate.
I've heard good things about it, but it was such a new manga, it was not going to get, it was not going to be finished.
And honestly, the animation was before its time if they wanted to stick to the beautiful art that the manga presents. You just couldn't do that kind of thing at that time without a lot of money.
And then finally, they could do that thing at this time.
Oh, and
then we got Berserk 2016.
Oh.
Which was the most infamous 3D animated series until X-Arm came out, really.
Honestly, it's
probably the one that stings the most.
I was going to say, if you haven't been following recent anime coming out, you'd probably still remember Berserk as the worst.
Because,
3D animated.
That is some rough animation in there.
Oh yeah, that's some hot garbage, y'all.
Studio Leiden Films, Gemba, and Millipensi. Millipensi.
Yeah, whatever that is. They failed. They fucking failed.
They failed pretty hard because it only got one season, to my understanding, and
obviously did not finish the book series.
No.
In fact, I would like to make the addendum that, in fact, Berserk may be a show that we get a reboot for in 5 to 10 years on the basis that at some point, ideally, we all hope, as fans and people that follow the mangaka's career, we all hope that eventually the fans will be able to at least see the notes and what he planned for the final story, understand what he was going for. It's unfortunate that we've recently lost the author. But I know that a lot of his fans are still hopeful that at the very least notes will be released. Mm-hmm. And in that vein, there is still the potential for a remake like Shaman King or Fruits Basket that stays true to the story. And doesn't do what 2016 did with the animation now that they've learned their lesson.
Ooh. You know, I hope that one day fans get to see a good continuation. I hope fans get to see some kind of ending to the story, even if it's just the notes from the original creator.
Because it's been so long and it's such a beloved series.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean, Berserk is one of the few things that I have people I know who like shoujo, I have people I know who like seinen, shonen, and a lot of them universally agree. Berserk is fantastic.
If I remember, it's one of the big seinen manga next to, was it Vinland Saga and Kingdom?
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's a long running as well. I mean, It's been up there for a long time.
So far, though, only one to get a good anime release has been Vinland Saga.
Which was a very good release. But I mean, you know, it seems to be that more recently, you know, in the last 10 years, we've had a lot of reboots and remakes of older shows. And most of them have been quite good.
I wonder when it'll start to become too much. Because you notice, like...
When it will start to come to a point where it'll feel like the manga industry is just telling you to go back and watch things from before you got into anime. You know? When it will come to a point where the manga industry will be telling Knick-Knack, rather than watching what's coming out new this season or another isekai, why don't you go back and watch Fushigi Yugi?
Like, there's been a understandable desire for another Fate Stay Night remake to readapt the original first route because it wasn't done very well originally.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I'd kind of rather they go on to new stuff.
Yeah, at this point, I think you've reached terminal adaptions in terms of how many Stay Nights there are floating around. Like, even if they're covering different routes, it's still the same story.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some shows that don't need to be readapted. For example, I'm glad they never restarted Prince of Tennis, the anime. I'm glad what they did with Inuyasha and Prince of Tennis was they just waited for the manga to come out more. Because certain things don't need a reboot. I mean, if you stuck close to the original material in the original series, then you only need to do the reboot necessarily from where you diverged.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like Fullmetal, you can make the first couple episodes recap of all the canon stuff and then move on to new content.
I think where I'm getting scared is with the reboot portion when you're looking at like Inuyasha. There isn't, even if you're enjoying it right now, there was not original source material for that. That could have been something adapted or a full anime original series that could have been adapted.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe it ends up being really good, but I'm scared that eventually we will start to see too many reboots, remakes.
Whatever the case may be, I hold out hope that we will get a Del Toro Quest remake, where you can actually find the last 4 episodes. Considering that you actually cannot find the last 4 episodes of the anime anywhere available, even though it came out with 64 episodes, there are only 60 available. Even on pirating sites, it's very annoying.
We've covered most of the big remakes. There are a few weird, like there's Digimon's remake, but I don't think either of us really care to go into too much.
If we don't know about it, we probably shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we mentioned Sailor Moon Crystal, because it's a very famous reboot at the beginning. But
I mentioned Dororo because it's so recent, people have heard of it.
Yeah. But I think with that being said, a reboot or a remake isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it could also be a really good thing. You can have shows like Fruits Basket where it's sticking 100% to the script material and the animation is beautiful and people are loving it, but you also can have Berserk 2016.
I'm less worried about individual remakes as much as I'm worried about trends in the end.
Yeah. We'll see.
I am seeing a trend start to grow.
We'll see where this trend goes. I think right now we still have enough individual anime coming out.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely have to see.
Alright, well.
We'll see you next time with another Talk No Jutsu.
Try harder, everyone.